Hello, everyone. Have you ever heard about the genocide that killed more than 6 million Jewish people? Or about the Second World War, a conflict that claimed the lives of over 8.5 million people across the globe? The man responsible for both of these blood-soaked tragedies is a name the world will never forget. Today, we will talk about him, Adolf Hitler. In April of 1889, in a small border town called Braunau am Inn, between Austria and Germany, a child was born. His name was Adolf Hitler. His father, Alois, had already been married twice before. The first wife had died early. The second soon became ill. During her sickness, a young relative named Clara came to care for her. After the second wife passed away, Alois married Clara. Together they had several children. 3 of them died in infancy. Only one survived. That child was Adolf. Because he was the only surviving son, his mother devoted all her love and protection to him. The family later had another child, a younger brother. Adolf went to a public elementary school, where his teachers described him as intelligent, polite, and sometimes restless. But the family's financial situation grew worse. His father became short-tempered and often violent. He demanded strict obedience. At the age of 8, Hitler joined the church choir. He dreamed of becoming a priest. But soon tragedy struck. His younger brother died of measles, and the loss deeply affected him. From that day, the boy who had once been lively and bright grew distant and withdrawn. He began to argue with his teachers and with his father. His grades dropped sharply. Alois wanted his son to work as a civil servant, a safe and respectable career. But Adolf refused. He said he would become a great artist instead. The more his father pushed, the more the boy resisted. Their relationship deteriorated year after year. When Alois's health began to fail, the arguments stopped, but the distance remained. After his father's death, Adolf left school with no qualifications. Still, he clung to his dream of art. In 1907, at the age of 18, he left home for Vienna. He hoped to study painting at the Academy of Fine Arts. He failed the entrance exam. When he tried again, he failed a second time. Then, in December of 1908, his mother died of cancer. Her death devastated him. Without family support, he drifted between cheap lodgings, living off small savings and occasional help from friends. He worked wherever he could, sweeping snow, carrying luggage, laboring on construction sites. Later he began painting small postcards and street scenes to sell to tourists. It was enough to survive, nothing more. Life in Vienna hardened him. The city was filled with political agitation, street preachers, and newspapers preaching nationalism and hatred. Anti-Semitic ideas were common, and Hitler absorbed them gradually. Many historians believe that during these years, resentment and prejudice began to take root in his mind. By 1913, he left Vienna and moved to Munich in Germany. The following year, in August 1914, the First World War began. Across Europe, millions were called to arms. Although still an Austrian citizen, Hitler volunteered to fight for Germany. He was accepted and sent to the Western Front as a soldier in the Bavarian army. During the war, Hitler served as a messenger on the front lines in France and Belgium. He lived through years of mud, rain, and shell fire. The fighting was relentless, but he rarely complained. He was wounded once by shrapnel, and later temporarily blinded by poison gas. His commanders considered him disciplined and loyal. For his service, he received the Iron Cross, a high military honor for bravery. For Hitler, the army was more than duty. It gave him purpose, structure, and a sense of belonging that he had never known before. But in 1918, everything collapsed. Germany, exhausted and starved by years of war, finally surrendered. The empire fell. For many soldiers, it was a bitter ending. For Hitler, it was unbearable. When he learned of the surrender while recovering in a military hospital, He refused to believe it. He felt betrayed. He convinced himself that Germany had not lost on the battlefield, but had been stabbed in the back, betrayed by traitors at home, by socialists, and by the Jews. This belief would become the foundation of his hatred and his politics. After the war, Hitler returned to Munich. Germany was in chaos. The Kaiser had abdicated, the monarchy was gone, and a fragile new republic had been declared. The country faced economic collapse, political violence, and humiliation from the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was forced to pay enormous reparations to the victorious Allied powers. Its army was limited, its territories were taken, and its people were left angry and poor. Inflation rose to unimaginable levels. A loaf of bread that once cost a few marks could soon cost millions. Families carried their money in baskets just to buy food. The people were desperate, looking for someone to blame and someone to follow. Hitler, now in his early 30s, was assigned by the army to monitor small political groups that might threaten the government. One of those groups was the German Workers' Party, a tiny organization that mixed nationalism with resentment against the treaty and the Jews. He attended one of their meetings out of curiosity. What he heard there, passionate speeches about German pride and betrayal, matched his own thoughts. Soon he joined the party himself. His membership number was 555. But Hitler was no ordinary member. He quickly stood out as a powerful speaker. He spoke loudly, with emotion and conviction. His words tapped into the anger of the crowd. He told them that Germany had been humiliated, that the politicians had betrayed the people, and that only unity under a strong leader could restore the nation's greatness. Audiences listened. They cheered. He had found his stage. By 1920, he left the army and devoted himself entirely to politics. The German Workers' Party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or simply the Nazi Party. Its new symbol, a red flag with a black swastika in a white circle, became the emblem of the movement. Germany at that time was still suffering. The Treaty of Versailles had crushed its economy. Factories closed, jobs disappeared, and poverty spread everywhere. To pay its debts, the government printed more and more money, which only made things worse. Inflation spiraled out of control. Money lost all meaning. People traded goods or used banknotes as fuel for their stoves. Bitterness turned to rage. Hitler saw opportunity in the despair. He told the people that he would restore Germany's honor, end their suffering, and make the nation strong again. Crowds began to gather wherever he spoke. He offered not just promises, but someone to blame and someone to follow. In November 1923, Hitler decided that words were no longer enough. He believed it was time for action. Inspired by Mussolini's March on Rome, he and his followers planned to seize power in Munich. They gathered in a large beer hall where local officials were meeting. Armed men surrounded the building. Hitler announced that a revolution had begun. But the uprising, later known as the Beer Hall Putsch, collapsed within hours. The police opened fire. 16 Nazis and 4 police officers were killed. Hitler fled but was quickly arrested. He was charged with treason. During his trial, he turned the courtroom into a platform for propaganda. He admitted his guilt proudly, claiming that everything he had done was for the good of Germany. His passionate speeches impressed the judges and turned him into a national figure. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but served only 9 months. While in prison, he dictated a book to his loyal follower Rudolf Hess. It was called Mein Kampf, meaning My Struggle. In it, he described his ideology: nationalism, racial purity, hatred of Jews and communists, and the belief that Germany must expand to survive. The book spread his ideas far beyond prison walls. After his release, Hitler found a changed Germany. The economy had begun to recover with help from foreign loans, and people were less willing to follow extremists. The Nazi Party was temporarily banned, and its influence declined. But Hitler was patient. He reorganized the movement, focusing on legal ways to gain power. He built a network of local branches, propaganda offices, and youth organizations. In 1929, everything changed again. The stock market in New York crashed, and the world plunged into economic depression. American loans to Germany stopped. Banks failed, factories closed, and unemployment soared. Millions of Germans lost everything. Fear and anger returned. Once more, Hitler's speeches drew massive crowds. He promised jobs, order, and national revival. He blamed the government for weakness and the Jews for corruption. The Nazi Party used every modern tool of propaganda, posters, radio, and rallies, to spread its message. By 1932, the Nazis had become the largest political party in Germany. Still, Hitler had no majority to rule alone. The president, Paul von Hindenburg, a respected war hero, distrusted him. Hindenburg called Hitler a demagogue and refused to appoint him chancellor. But behind the scenes, conservative politicians believed they could control Hitler and use his popularity for their own goals. Under pressure, Hindenburg finally gave in. On January 30, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Crowds filled the streets, carrying torches, singing and shouting his name. They believed a new era had begun. For many, it was a moment of hope. For the world, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Once in power, Hitler moved quickly to eliminate all opposition. Just a few weeks after his appointment, a mysterious fire broke out in the German parliament building, the Reichstag. The Nazis blamed the communists, calling it proof of a plot to destroy Germany. Hitler used the event to convince President Hindenburg to sign an emergency decree. It suspended civil liberties, allowed police to arrest anyone without trial, and silenced all political rivals. Thousands of opponents were imprisoned. The first concentration camp, Dachau, was established in March 1933. It was presented as a place for political re-education, but in truth, it became a model for terror. In the same month, the Nazis pushed through the Enabling Act, giving Hitler the power to make laws without the parliament. With one vote, democracy in Germany ended. Hitler was no longer just chancellor. He was dictator. Trade unions were banned, rival parties dissolved, and the press was censored. Books that challenged Nazi ideology were burned in public squares. Children were taught to idolize the Führer. The swastika flag became the symbol of the nation. Within a year, President Hindenburg died. Hitler merged the offices of Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer, the supreme leader of Germany. Every soldier, every government official, and every citizen was forced to swear loyalty directly to him. The Nazis glorified discipline and obedience. They promised unity, prosperity, and national pride. Behind that promise stood violence and fear. The secret police, the Gestapo, monitored every whisper of dissent. Neighbors spied on neighbors. Children were encouraged to report their own parents if they spoke against the regime. In 1934, Hitler faced a potential challenge from his own ranks. The SA, the Brown Shirts, a paramilitary group that had helped him rise to power, was demanding greater control. Its leader, Ernst Röhm, became a threat. Hitler acted ruthlessly. On the night of June 30, 1934, in an event later called the Night of the Long Knives, Röhm and hundreds of others were executed. The purge removed every rival inside and outside the party. The army, relieved to see the SA destroyed, swore loyalty to Hitler in return. By 1935, Hitler's control was absolute. He began rebuilding the military, violating the Treaty of Versailles. New weapons factories opened, and conscription returned. While other nations protested, they did little to stop him. Germany's economy revived through rearmament and massive public projects. To many Germans, it seemed as though Hitler had restored strength and dignity to the country. But beneath the surface, the regime was tightening its grip on every aspect of life. The Nazis introduced laws defining who was and was not a German. The Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of citizenship and banned marriage between Jews and non-Jews. Jewish businesses were boycotted, their property confiscated, and their rights erased. Persecution became official policy. Propaganda filled the airwaves, painting Hitler as Germany's savior and Jews as the enemy within. Those who believed lived in pride and illusion. Those who saw the truth lived in fear. By 1938, Hitler's ambitions were no longer confined within Germany's borders. He announced that all German-speaking peoples should live under one nation. That year, he ordered the annexation of Austria. The Austrian government collapsed without resistance. Crowds cheered as German troops marched into Vienna. The Western powers protested but took no action. Next came Czechoslovakia. Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, a region with many ethnic Germans. At the Munich Conference in 1938, Britain and France, desperate to avoid another war, agreed to let him have it. They called it peace for our time. Hitler saw it as weakness. Within months, he seized the rest of Czechoslovakia as well. Then, on September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. At first, German victories came swiftly. The new strategy of blitzkrieg, lightning war, combined tanks, aircraft, and rapid infantry attacks. Within weeks, Poland was conquered. By the summer of 1940, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France had all fallen. Hitler stood triumphant over most of Europe. But his success came at a terrible cost. Everywhere the Nazi armies went, persecution followed. The Jewish population of Europe was targeted, confined, and later deported. In 1941, after invading the Soviet Union, Nazi leaders began the systematic extermination of Jews. What began as forced labor and shootings evolved into industrial murder. Camps were built for one purpose: mass killing. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, and others became symbols of horror. 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, Poles, Russians, Roma, the disabled, and political prisoners, were murdered under Hitler's command. It was the largest and most organized genocide in human history. Meanwhile, Hitler's war expanded. He broke his non-aggression pact with Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. At first, his armies advanced rapidly, but the Russian winter and fierce resistance halted them. The tide began to turn. In December of 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into the war. Germany declared war on America, adding yet another enemy. By 1943, after defeats in Stalingrad and North Africa, the illusion of German invincibility shattered. Bombs rained down on German cities. Supplies dwindled. Millions of soldiers were dead or captured. Still, Hitler refused to surrender. He issued impossible orders, moving divisions that no longer existed. He executed his own generals for retreating. He trusted no one. By early 1945, the Red Army had reached the outskirts of Berlin. Germany lay in ruins. On April 30, 1945, in a bunker beneath the shattered city, Adolf Hitler took his own life. Outside, the Third Reich collapsed. The man who had promised a 1,000-year empire had ruled for only 12. His vision had brought nothing but ruin. To his people, to Europe, and to the world. After his death, some refused to believe he was gone. Rumors spread that he had escaped, that he was still alive somewhere. But the evidence was clear. The dictator who once set the world on fire had met his end in the ashes he created. Hitler's story remains one of history's darkest warnings, that hatred, once unleashed, can consume nations, and that the silence of ordinary people can allow evil to grow unchecked.